I hear these things and I talk to people about their money, and I really do feel like it's a form of therapy, right? Getting people on the same page. But in all honesty, it's outside of me just saying that. I think I just read something that said that money and sex are the two leading causes of divorce. So I imagine people are here talking to you about their arguments with money as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I had a scenario recently where the husband they pulled credit and they didn't want neither one of them wanted the other person to see the credit report because they both had, she had credit cards that he didn't know about and the balance is higher, and he had co-signed for stuff for his parents that she didn't know about.
Yep.
So when people come in with that type of scenario, the reality is you're much more equipped to give therapy than I am. So what kind of advice would you give to a couple that was in there talking about that specific kind of money scenario?
So in specific with that, I would lead with being in integrity. So if we're hiding something, if we're lying about it, even by omission, if perhaps there's guilt or shame attached, those are all indications that we're out of integrity. And what does that even mean? Integrity is that when we're doing actions that are in alignment with our values, meaning that you're not afraid to talk about it, you're happy to share this with your partner, those are the ones where we really are able to get back on the same page. So for example, with the integrity piece, if you're doing some of those other behaviors, then there's definitely the need for accountability. And that's big time where I can come in and be of service to those individuals, because that can be a really hard conversation to have. I've been hiding a couple of things that I didn't want to bring up to you. I thought you might get mad about it. And they're allowed to have their feelings around it, as you are as well. But when you can both get on the same page, a lot of times then we can look at the values that each person shares and come back into a better place so you can go forward and really have such a good experience.
I would argue that it's the hardest to be me in the room. I'm just sitting there like, okay, here we go. We're going to have some discovery moments now.
Yes, yes.
Another thing that comes up a lot, and it's going back to the beginning, and almost to what I think would be a great thing to come up in premarital counseling, but a lot of people just aren't on the same page when they get to my office. You know, one spouse is really into saving money and wanting to set a more conservative financial budget for the family. And the other spouse doesn't really care about having investments or building wealth and just wants to live in a cute neighborhood, even if that means renting. What are some conversations people could have, before they even get married to someone, about money?
I'm going to come back to the values piece 100%, because when it comes to values, it might be different from one or the other. It's where you have the similarities that you can really build, right? But if you guys are fairly mutually exclusive in terms of where you're at and what you want, that is absolutely an important conversation to have prior to getting married, because that will come up again and again and again. John Gottman calls that a perpetual issue. So it's not that you're good, bad, right, or wrong. It's just one of those where you're going to have to address those very different ways of being over and over again.
And making sure that your values align, like you're saying.
Yeah.
It's important to both of us that we have this house. It's important to both of us how nice of the house it is.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. And a lot of times our desires are not necessarily in alignment with the resources that we have available.
Oh, yeah.
And so sometimes we can each bring a little something to the table. So for example, with the couple that you described there, one who is very into saving, that's good. You should have your rainy day fund. You should ensure those bills get paid. And then on the opposite side, having a little spontaneity with the discretionary funds and setting aside a very clear amount. One of the problems as well that I see that can happen is when one partner overrules and decides what the values are for the couple. That's where some major tension occurs. But it can also be something like one person values golf, whereas the other one values their hair and nails. Again, it's not that either side is wrong, but to each person, those are very important. So we have to be really careful not to invalidate the other in the process of talking about what is most important.
That makes sense, and I'm going to write that down when we're done, about sometimes our desires exceed our resources.
Yes.
I could use that in my office. So Another thing that comes up, and a lot of times it's been the husband is ruling the finances and the wife doesn't really have a seat at the table. And what advice could you give to the women out there who feel like, you know, I don't know enough about our money and I don't feel like I'm a decision maker in the finances. And maybe in some relationships it's the woman it's the other way around, but that's just an example. For either spouse, how can they have more authority on the money talk?
Oof. Now this is a common one. I do find that this is a really typical dynamic, is that one or the other is probably going to be more responsible for the finances. But it does oftentimes lead to some anxiety, perhaps on the side of the person who is watching the finances, and they'll say, oh, we can't do this, this, and this. Whereas the other one, they have no idea. It's really abstract for them. You know, it's kind of like, oh, but we should have enough. I know what my paycheck is, so I don't know. Yeah. And so part of that too is sitting down together and looking at line by line what's going on, where the money is going, and then looking at the bigger goals. Right? So when it comes down to that plan of action, it's really nice to know how each partner can contribute to those bigger goals, those bigger dreams, what it is that you are both cultivating in your life, what it is that you want out of your marriage. I mean, do you want travel? Do you want to have this big, beautiful house? Do you want a family? Those are all really important conversations to have. But coming back to the piece specifically that you asked there, I find that I do better with a visual. So if I am able to see a visual of what it is that the financial health looks like in the relationship, then I think that for each partner, they can better see, oh, this is what's happening.
This is where we really stand.
Right.
And
exactly.
if both of you know, then both of you can work towards the goal together.
That's exactly right.
Which is something I work on a lot. And
yes.
I think that, I think therapy is something that's great for everyone. And I think that knowing where you stand with your finances is also something that's great for everybody.
You bet.
So I hope this video will make people feel more comfortable in coming to me to get their life together. And then maybe if they need to, going to a therapist to get the bigger picture together.
Love it.